Okay. So welcome to the final session of the Dentistry and Medicine workshop. I'm happy to see you guys have attended, and obviously we've got a few regular attendees. So Christina and Caitlin, nice to see you guys are here again as well. Today we're going to be focusing on the interview. Definitely my favorite part of the application process. Because yeah, for me it was the easiest, and yeah, I just enjoyed it a lot, and it was nice to, I guess, just go to the school and like meet all the people who were planning to apply for the same course in that setting. It was just really interesting. I'll talk more about my experience of it later. I've got a slide for that, but yeah. Here we've got our social media. I've done the introductions before, and I honestly haven't written down what I was supposed to say, so I can't remember. So we'll just have to skip past that. But here's all our social media. If you want, take a picture of it, but definitely check out Instagram. We're really, really active on that, as well as our TikTok. And then if you want to utilize our tutoring services, you've obviously got the website at the bottom there. Okay. So why do we need interviews? So if you pass the first stage of the admissions process, you then get sent an interview, and the interview is your opportunity to show, I guess, show off more about yourself, or just let the admissions tutors know more about you as an individual, because that's what they're searching for, just to learn more about you. And it's really just an opportunity for them to fact check, sorry. It's easy to, like, I guess, lie in your personal statement, but at the interview it's impossible to do that sort of stuff. It comes off, it just shows when you're really passionate about what you're doing. And obviously there's so many applicants, and so they really need to refine down to the best applicants. And interviews are a great way to do that, and to see whether someone is genuinely going to be a good doctor or dentist. Yeah, you just get to show off your personal qualities, and the interviewers will see that, as well as talk about more about your skills, and they get to see more of your skills as well in person. Are they different this year? So yeah, for 2021 entry, from what I've researched, it's going to be online. So that means Zoom, Blackboard, and Microsoft Teams is what they'll be using. One thing that surprised me was that there are quite a few universities that are going to be doing traditional interviews, and less than usual. Like normally it's just Oxbridge that do traditional, but now there's quite a few, because I guess doing MMIs online is quite difficult. And so, yeah, there's just a lot that's doing traditional interviews. Quick question. Can everyone put in the chat what year they are in, or what year they're going into? Just so I know, or I can like tailor what I'm going to say to what everyone else is in. So yeah, Christina's going into year 13, year 12, year 10. Wow. Year 13. Okay, I think that's everyone, yeah. Okay, wow, year 10. That's really, really good. Okay, yeah, this is a great introduction for you if you're doing this in year 10. So yeah, where was I? Are they different? Yeah, so they're going to be online this year. That means you need to get, or just teach yourself a few new skills, like getting good at just presenting or talking to a camera. There's loads of small things that you have to do, but it can also be awkward, I guess. I mean, I don't really know what's going to be like for you guys, but it'll just be new and unfamiliar, seeing as you won't have as many people giving you preparation or tips on like how to do well on an online interview. And you've obviously never done it before, but I guess you can practice with friends and stuff like that, doing it on Zoom. When are interview offers sent? So after you send off your application, you've done your UCAT, deadline's passed October 15th, you then get an interview offer around early November. So between early November and March, I got my interviews quite early on. I didn't get any interviews in like that March phase, but you can get interviews then. Like in school, for me, I got my interviews quite early, and they send them out in like batches as well. I think I was probably like in the first batch for all of them. Maybe that's a good thing. I have no idea. But I had a friend who didn't get an interview till like March, and he thought he wasn't going to get in, but then he got that interview from Birmingham. It was really, really late. So just know that they send it in batches. I'm going to assume that they're probably sending it in batches to get their favorite students first. And then the last few batches, I guess, would be the less favorite students, maybe, I don't know. But it seems like that's what they would do. If not, but then they've also got loads of applicants. So they might just be spreading it out over those dates. When will I know the outcome? What do I write for this? Oh, you'll know within a couple of weeks whether you were successful. For me, definitely was in a couple of weeks. I wrote a couple of weeks, but for me, it wasn't. It was like, oh, okay, yeah. So some of them will let you know within a couple of weeks, and some of them will hold off until like March time. I got all my offers around March time. And yeah, what are the different types of interviews? So MMI and traditional, and I'll go into that in more detail on our later slides. So this is just an example of a university for medicine, and I guess just the details of the interview. So this is Birmingham. You can see they do MMIs, and you can see when they send out the interviews between December and January. But as I said, my friend got an interview in that March time, which was interesting. When are the interviews held? January to February. I guess this is quite up to date. So this is for this year or last year at least. I was obviously 2020 entry and applied in 2019. Yeah, applied in 2019, entered in 2020. And then you can see the topics. I wouldn't trust that stuff. This is from the Medic portal. I copy and pasted this table here, and it goes into very superficial detail on what they're going to assess you on. I wouldn't trust it. I'm going to show you everything they're going to assess you on, and you want to just teach yourself everything. I definitely wouldn't believe that, because yeah, just no. MMIs, okay. So this is one of the interview styles. As I said, you've got MMI and traditional. The majority of them will do MMIs. And if you're going back to in-person interviews, they would all be MMIs. If you're 2022 entry, you might be back for in-person interviews. I feel like you should be, because doing it online is quite a hassle and it comes with a lot of disadvantages. It's nice to just do it in person. So yeah, I'm sure they'll do it in person. What is an MMI? MMI stands for multiple mini interviews. You're basically put through lots of short assessments instead of like a long traditional interview where you sit behind a panel of like individuals who are related to your course. You go through lots of short assessments. And the reason why universities do it is because it's a lot less biased. Because you can imagine if you had a panel which are just full of people that naturally liked you or you were similar to, you would obviously have that advantage. Or oh, I forgot what I was going to say there. Well, there's just a lot of bias for doing it traditionally, and that's why up until before the pandemic, almost every medical school except for Oxbridge were doing it by MMIs. Universities like Imperial and UCL had very recently changed to MMIs. And so I'm assuming that they will change back for if you're trying to apply for this year. No, not, yeah, this year. If you're applying for this year, I'd assume they change back. What are these stations like? So there are 6 different stations, typically. You've got role play stations, professional judgment stations, prioritization stations, giving instructions, calculations, and data interpretation, and PBL. So this is exactly the same for dentistry and medicine. They're exactly the same. The only difference is that in a dentistry interview, you might have a station on manual dexterity. So they'll force you to, like, for me, during one of my interviews, they made me like put together a mirror whilst having a conversation with the interviewer. And that was to test my manual dexterity, but also how well I could do that. And also talk to that individual. It was pretty tough. I think I did pretty bad, but I guess everyone would have done that because I was a pretty tough station. Yeah, those are the 6 main types of stations. It can vary, it does vary quite a lot. But that's what you can typically expect from an MMI. Then on the right, I've got how can I stand out at my MMI interview. You can just read that. What are schools looking for? Well, as I said, it's short. They're short assessments basically, and they want to find an individual that is all-rounded, and it really tests you in quite a fair way to see whether you're all-rounded in that manner. It's really reliable, I guess. It's efficient in that the people that tend to score well at the MMIs tend to be the students that do well in dental school or med school. But yeah, I'm just reading what else I wrote. Okay, so they'll be testing your ability to make ethical and informed decisions on the spot, as well as your critical thinking and your communication skills. The best way in which you can prepare for this, just practice. For me, my preparation style, I had a lot of opportunities to practice these interviews and to do them in that formal interview setting. As I said, I went for that medic mentor summer course, and that gave me an amazing, I guess, taster, or not really a taster, I guess a trial. I can't think of the exact word for it, but it was exactly like what my interviews were like. It had that exact same pressure, and that gave me a good opportunity to understand. That was a good opportunity for me to understand what I would need to bring to my next interview in the real thing. So you definitely want to try and find any opportunity you can to practice your interviews in like a formal setting. As I said, I really recommend that medic mentor course. How can I? Yeah, so on top of that, so after I did that practice session, I then had a book. I had this book from the workshop or the summer school, and it's got tons of questions in there. And I worked through each of the questions in an essay format, and I wrote down as much as I could. So I'll be like, why do you want to be a dentist, or why are you choosing dentistry? And I'd write down the longest, the most perfect answer possible. I wouldn't memorize it. I just write it down so that I understood everything that I could say in an interview or formal setting. And then I'd practice answering that question like out loud in a conversation style. Because within my answer, there would have been things that I would remember. So like I always like to say that dentistry was something that combined three of my biggest passions, which was the sciences, caring for others, and it also introduced an artistic flair, artistic and creative flair to that field in which I was searching for. And it was the only, I guess, profession in which gave me all of those things. And that was one of the main things that I always wanted to mention. And I just taught myself how to start reciting my answer, but in a conversation format. That's the most important thing, like doing so in that conversation format. And then when you get to the interview, it just comes natural, because they want to have a conversation with you. They want it to be very natural and they don't want anything to feel forced. And once you can master that conversation format, yeah, the interviews can be something that's really enjoyable. So yeah, that's how I prepared. I'll go into more detail. I've got more slides on that, but here are the MMI interview or MMI universities for this year in 2021. So yeah, you could take a picture if you want to. It's on that Medic Portal website as well, so you can also check that. Now, traditional interviews. Traditional interviews, as I said, there are more universities this year that are, oh, someone's trying to get in. So as I said, with traditional interviews, there are more universities that are doing it this year. Probably, as I said, because it's just easier to do a one-on-one call or like a form-on call from Zoom instead of like having all of these breakout rooms, and yeah, and that can just end up going badly, I guess. So yeah, traditional interviews, you sit against or across a panel of individuals that are related to the course. So you could have a professor, a doctor, a local, literally just a local individual who can just assess you on whether they really like you and whether they feel like you'd be a good doctor, whether they'd want you to be their doctor in the future. Yeah, it can be really intense in comparison to the MMI. You could be sat across a set of individuals that just don't like who you are or don't like your personality, even though you may end up being a really good individual or a really good doctor. It can just be really biased. What you want to try and achieve within a traditional interview is just to get a conversation going. You'd have to give all your answers in a format that would allow for the I guess, the interviewers to just continue off of that and bounce back and forth with you in that conversation format. That's how you would stand out, and that's how you'd want it to just, you'd want to basically just ease the tension that would naturally come from that. And that's what the best applicants manage to do. They're very much question focused. So they'll ask you a question, you answer back, and then they'll probe you based on your answers. And that's where that conversation bit enters. So you won't have any role play scenarios or like a communication task. It'll just be a bunch of questions within a set frame or a set time frame. And yeah, it'll just feel more like a genuine conversation. Okay, but you'll have longer to think about your answers and you'll have to come up with more elaborate answers as well. Who interviews me? So I've gone over that. How long does it last? Typically 20 to 40 minutes. So yeah, it can be quite intense, but I guess you'd get through it and you'd naturally find you'd get used to it midway through. So yeah. What questions will they ask? What have I written? So I don't know too much about traditional interviews, so I'm just reading through my notes. So the questions you get asked, they vary depending on the school, and you're not allowed to discuss them, but there are common themes and you can research and check on their website because they typically give a lot of hints based on what they're going to ask. They can be scientifically based, but they're normally questions that will just force you to think, and they'll give you time to think, and you'd have to then give an elaborate answer. You'd have to practice how to structure your answers properly. But you also don't want to take too long to think of an answer. There's a way in which you can teach yourself to give answers but also be thinking at the same time. But yeah, and then how can I stand out in one? As I said, if you can achieve that conversation format, but also be able to give elaborate answers, then that's what will allow you to stand out. And it doesn't take a lot for you to stand out. Not every individual is going to be completely unique to each other in the interview. They just want to see whether you are suitable enough to be an average candidate at the university that you're applying to. I think, yeah, when I heard that, definitely eased a lot of the pressure that I was thinking of in the interview, because you always hear, how can I stand out? But they're just trying to see whether you'd be an average student. So if you come there being yourself, hopefully with all the work that you've done, they're the ones I'll just be able to tell whether you'd be a good average student at the university. They don't want to find who's going to be the best student at the university. They just want to see if you can be an average student there. Okay. So here are the traditional universities this year, quite a lot. And as I said, normally it's only Oxbridge that do traditional, and Oxbridge isn't even that traditional. It's more like their interviews are more in a supervision, or yeah, I think that's what they call it, supervision styles, where they're just highly scientific. They're just really scientifically based, and it's meant to resemble what your tutorials would be like. And so really they're assessing whether you do well within their tutorial format. Okay, so Oxbridge. So yeah, Oxbridge interviews are different to traditional. They're slightly traditional, but yeah, they're different in their own way, in that they're meant to resemble what a supervision or tutorial would be like. You obviously would have tutorials really frequently, and the interviewer is going to ask you really challenging questions that are supposed to, I guess, surprise you, but they'd want you to answer that question with confidence, and also, yeah, just answer it with confidence and be able to talk through your answer. I guess holding their hand through your answer so that they understand where it came from. They don't expect you to give a correct answer. They expect you to just give a well thought out answer. And the importance of that, then your answer could be so wrong. I've watched videos of people doing these mock Oxbridge interviews, and they could give completely wrong answers. But as long as you're able to show your thinking process really, really well as you do that, and they understand how you thought about going into that answer, that's what's going to make you stand out, not necessarily getting the right answer, because they don't expect you to anyways. You've never come across the concepts that they're going to assess you on. One thing I did see in a video I watched was that depending on what college you're applying to, you can see, you might be able to find out who's going to be interviewing you, and you can look up like, I mean, on the websites for each college, they'll have labeled who their admissions tutors are, and you can expect those individuals to be the people who would interview you. And you can then go and research them up and see what area of medicine they're interested in. And they'll typically be asking you questions on that area that they're interested in. So I think one student I saw on a video, he had an interviewer who was like really interested in renal circulation, so the kidneys. And so he went and read up on like a bunch of textbooks on the kidneys, and prepared for that and prepared for questions on that. And the guy did actually ask him questions on the kidneys. So he did well in that aspect. What can I expect? So you can expect questions that will surprise you, questions that will be unfamiliar to you. But as I said, you'll need to answer that confidently. Being confident in that, knowing your answer isn't necessarily going to be directly correct, but just having confidence in whatever you feel like your answer is, and trying to elaborate that really clearly to the interviewer. What questions could I be asked? I'm sure some of you might have heard some some of the types of questions they ask you. Like I've seen things like, what is a banana? And like if they ask me that, I don't know what I would say. I mean, I'll probably just waffle, but I doubt that sort of question would come up, a question of that difficulty would come up. That's a really horrible question. But in a book I saw, they had that as a question. But questions I've seen students getting asked, they're definitely not on that level of difficulty. They would come under the same topics that I'm going to explore in future slides on the next couple of slides. But they will obviously have questions that are highly scientific. So one question that I thought was really good is they asked the student, so what makes a perfect virus? And that student obviously had to think about it. They're questions in which you might have a very small amount of knowledge on, but then you'd have to use your own intuition to then create a perfect answer. So with that question, what makes a perfect virus? That student went on to talk about how a virus relies on its host to survive. So a perfect virus would be one that doesn't kill its host, but that can perfectly utilize its organelles to facilitate its own reproduction or replication. And yeah, that was basically a summary of what they said. But that was a good answer because at A level in year 12, they would have studied viruses and they would understand that viruses they have a parasitic function, so they rely on a host to survive. And so she used that, I guess, surface knowledge in which she had to answer the question. That's just one example. In terms of if you are thinking of applying to Oxbridge or just for any interviews, I'd always recommend YouTube videos. And I sadly haven't put any in the keynote now that I realize it, but there are some amazing YouTube videos in which they walk through some really good questions and explain how they went through their answers in the interview process. Okay, I feel like I've answered the last 2 questions as I was talking. So, okay. My interview experiences. Okay, so I had 3. Yeah, I had 3 interviews. Manchester, Cardiff, and Liverpool. And I thought all of them went well. I got 2 offers from Liverpool and Cardiff, and then I was rejected by Manchester and Birmingham, then got another offer from Manchester for biomed, because that was my 5th application. That was the 5th thing I applied for. Yeah, like I feel like I know why I got rejected at Manchester, because at the very end I made a really vital or just big mistake. I thought it was my best interview, and at the end I made a mistake because I didn't know I made a mistake with like the ethics, or it was an ethical question. I made a pretty big error there. But other than that, all my other interviews, I thought that they went pretty well. So Cardiff, the interview for Cardiff I think that was my first one. It was a really warm environment. The interviewers were really kind, and they definitely did their best to make me feel comfortable. And as a result of that, I felt really confident as I was performing. Liverpool did the exact opposite. It was like they were trying to create as much pressure as possible. And that really, I guess, turned me away from wanting to study there when I got my offer, because at the interview, it was just really, it just felt a lot of pressure that was unnecessary there. And I could tell that everybody felt that pressure, which just didn't need to be there. Cardiff did the exact opposite. At Cardiff, we got asked, there were obviously multiple stations. I think each station, I probably had something like around 5 minutes for each station, but I got asked on several different topics. So I was definitely over 10, and I think the entire interview lasted about an hour. Also, I haven't said, all dentistry universities are MMI, by the way. So yeah, it lasted over an hour. And it was a really all-rounded assessment. They assessed every aspect of the application really well. And it forced, there was a lot of communication. And as I said, they had that manual dexterity station, but they also took the opportunity and the time to learn more about me as an individual. I remember one question they asked me, they asked me what is my spirit animal? And I did not expect that at all. And I was just looking at the interviewer. I couldn't tell if it was a joke because I didn't know what my spirit animal was. I don't know what I said, but I just waffled about over it and came up with something. But yeah, the interviews were so kind. I felt really kind. There was a lot of times where we were laughing, and it was definitely had that conversation format. And in that conversation format, I was able to get across a lot of the points that I practiced at home. But yeah, it was good. Okay, so one big thing that happened, so you can search up on Google interview questions from each university from like previous years. A couple of them came up in my interview, and for me, it was a data analysis question, and I'm horrible at data analysis. And luckily, that was the one that I seen online, and so I knew what to do. Like if I didn't see that one question online, I definitely wouldn't have got any points for that station. But yeah, you can search up past interview questions, and it's likely that some of them will come up. I think I did see some for each interview that I had. Okay, so that's, I guess, a summary of Cardiff. I can't remember all the stations, but it was just really, really calm, I guess, and friendly. Definitely something that I was looking for in my university. So Liverpool was the exact opposite. So I got to Liverpool and they had a sheet that we had to fill out, like obviously like a typical form that you'd expect, name, like date of birth. And I was supposed to fill out on the tray and I completely forgot. And so I got there and I hadn't filled it out. And the guy who I think was the head of the dental school, he looks at me like in front of my mom, like he rolled his eyes. And like, I was just like, wow. And obviously that threw me off for the entire interview. Because yeah, I was just a really, I guess, mean thing to do to someone who might be really nervous about what they're gonna go into face. And then going into the interview, they were a lot more strict. So at Cardiff, in the waiting room, we were allowed to actually talk to each other. And that definitely eased a lot of the pressure that was there. But at Liverpool, you had to sit in dead silence. And we sat in dead silence for like an hour in the hall. And they gave us like, they gave us like an introductory lecture. It was like 20 minutes. And they told us a lot about, they just gave us loads of rules, a lot of rules and like almost like threats, almost like about how we're not allowed to talk about the interview as we go out. And again, that had a very negative impact on my experience there. Because yeah, it felt very threatening the way that they were like dishing out all of these rules, like things we can and can't do during the interview. Things are pretty common sense, but they're just really, I guess, aggressive in their tone with that. So after that, we went up and I had one bad station. So at Cardiff, I didn't have any bad stations. At Liverpool, I did have a really, really bad station where I was completely flustered and I didn't know what to say. I think we asked. He asked something about treatment of diabetics, and I gave my answer, which I thought was a good answer, but I had like another 5 minutes to go by the time I'd finished my answer. And the guy was just looking at me and I didn't know what to say. And every time he'd ask me a follow-up question, I'd just answer it really quickly. And he didn't know what to say. And so we were just staring back and forth really awkwardly. And so I felt like I'd completely failed that station. But that's one thing about MMIs that's really good. in comparison to traditionals. If you had a question in which you messed up on, it wouldn't mess up the entire tone of the interview and thus affect the way you're going to perform, because you move on to the next station and it's completely fresh and new, and you get like another chance. So that's one of the reasons why I feel like they've definitely switched to MMI or the universities. But yeah, the next couple of stations are pretty good. They asked me the typical sorts of questions, and I'll go into that on the next slides. But everything I prepared for, it definitely came up. And one thing that I'd say saved me a lot in each of these interviews was doing that online course for dentistry. So mine was called Discover Dentistry, and hopefully they've got one for medicine as well. But I'd really recommend you do some sort of online course, because they're gonna ask you questions in which will require you to talk about the wider reading that you've done on, I guess, the profession. And one question they asked me was, they gave me a set of pictures of teeth, each in which had their own problems, and I had to identify what was wrong with all of them. Some of them we saw caries, some of them was apical periodontitis, so that's like gingival recession or recession of the gums. And yeah, like I can just imagine how difficult that would have been for me if I didn't know anything about the teeth. And that Discover Dentistry course gave me a really good introduction to those things. And I could talk about, I only recognized one of them. It was probably like 5 pictures. I could only genuinely talk about one of them. And that was where those caries. Actually, no, it was probably like 3 of them I spoke about. I saw caries, but I gave like a really detailed description of what was happening with the caries. I knew what caries was, and that's why like this bacteria growing on the teeth and they're producing acid as a byproduct. I spoke about that, and she was pretty interested. I guess pleased with what I said. The next ones I just walked forward and I said, oh, there's like gum recession here, and there's bleeding of the gums. It looks really red. Here there's inflammation, those sorts of things. But looking back at that, I can tell they wouldn't have expected every student or any student to be able to genuinely speak about what they can see. It was more like an opportunity to demonstrate how much wider reading you've done. And I feel like they would have expected you to be able to pick up on at least one of them and talk confidently on one of the things that you were seeing. Because obviously going into dentistry, they'll expect you to know things like the names of the teeth. Like, if it wasn't for that online course, I would not know the names of any of the teeth. So you've obviously got the incisors, like the canines, premolars, molars, those sorts of things. And that course gave me that sort of superficial knowledge. With a medicine course or online medicine course, they probably introduce you to things like diabetes, which is really, really huge and probably will come up. It'll come up in most interviews, because everyone gets a really good introduction to diabetes in school, but then they'll talk to you and ask you about the effects that diabetes can have, like on the NHS and like just the overall population and how public health is done. But yeah, online courses are good and they help you a lot, because they like to assess you on the wider reading you've done, because obviously that's a demonstration of your passion and interest in the field. After that, they asked me why this score. I messed up on that station because I forgot whether Liverpool was PBL or integrated, and it was PBL. I think I guessed in the end that was PBL, and I just spoke about PBL, and I spoke about the extracurricular activities that the university offers. That was really good because they want to see that you're all-rounded and that you're not just going to be focused on academia, because that's the sort of thing that will lead to burnout in a bad student. And then they asked me creative questions. I think they had a question was like, you're on an island and you're on an isolated island. You can only take 3 things with you. What would they be and why? And I don't know, I think I said I'd bring like a satellite, a so I could communicate with the outside world, so I can get help and leave when I want to. But if I don't want to leave, I can like use that satellite to give me connection, or internet connection, so I can stay up to date with the world. And he was really shocked when I said that, because I don't think I was supposed to say something like a satellite, but it might have come across as, I guess, funny that I said that. But yeah, I said a satellite for that purpose. And obviously that means I can get off the island when I want as well. I also said a piano, and this was me, I guess I was almost taking the piss here. I said a piano to practice, because I like to practice piano and play, because I wanted to show off that I do other things other than study all day. So I said piano, and I feel like at home I love playing the piano because it's a great stress outlet for me. And they love that word, stress outlet, because again, they're searching for students that aren't going to burn out. I don't play the piano anymore. I haven't played the piano in like 5 years. So I said I played the piano. And then, yeah, I said piano. And then because the piano complements my manual dexterity as well. And then I can't remember the third thing that I said. Probably books or something. So I could read and enjoy my time there. But really, yeah, that was a fun station. That was definitely one of the highlights, and one of the things I enjoyed about my interview, but also shows that interviews can be something fun, and you can make it fun. Just, I guess, try and turn everything into a conversation format to alleviate that pressure that is there. Because at Manchester, that's what happened. Manchester was definitely my best performance until that one station I feel like I messed up on. At every station, I had that conversation format going, and everything was just going perfectly. There was one station though where the interviewer messed up and I didn't. It was about my personal statement, and she just asked me really bad questions, and questions that, as I was trying to answer, she kept like butting in, and I wasn't able to give off a single answer. And because she kept butting in, trying to ask me lots of questions, she didn't actually give me any opportunity to answer the question, and we just ran out of time. And so I basically said absolutely nothing during that station. And yeah, that was definitely her fault. She seemed really unprepared, and like, I guess she was supposed to have a couple of minutes to read my personal statement, but she barely read anything by the time I got to the station, so she couldn't really ask me any questions. But yeah, I guess that was something that was unique to me. But that ethics station, it went perfectly for the 5 minutes that we were allocated, and it was my final station. At the end, we were just having a conversation, and he asked me something about confidentiality. That's what it was. It was a patient who couldn't come into a practice to pick up, I think it was a prescription or something like that, or she wanted to book an appointment, and she told her brother to do it. And he said, would the brother be allowed to book the appointment for her? And I said yes, completely forgetting that doing something like that would be breaking confidentiality or something like that. I think that was a question, but that was wrong. And I feel like that might have been the reason why I got rejected from Manchester. I'm not too sure. I never found out why. But that would have definitely been a red flag moment for me in that station. Okay. So yeah, that's basically a summary of my experience at interviews. This is what they look like. So I put a picture here. You've obviously got those panels or those dividers, and you're supposed to like stand behind them for 2 minutes so that you can't see what is on that station. So they might have a station with, like, say, a set of clay, and if you were able to see, that would obviously give you time to prepare for the station, or like, yeah, just give you an unfair advantage. So you stand behind there for a couple of minutes while you wait. Typically while you're waiting, they have like a sheet on one side. So as you can see on the left, on that blue panel on the left, you can see a sheet that's stuck on it. You would be reading that in like that 2 minute time that you'd be waiting. Then after the 2 minute timer for waiting, like a big beep will go off, and you go in, you introduce yourself to the interviewer. One thing that was really weird, oh my gosh, some of them are really awkward about shaking hands. Like I'll try to shake hands with some of them and they just be really awkward about it and they just wouldn't want to. Or I try and introduce myself and be like, hi, my name is Daniel, it's nice to meet you. And they, again, be really awkward about it. But I don't know what to say in terms of shaking hands. Maybe it just gives a wrong impression because they would have seen hundreds of students, and yeah, I guess they just want to get their job done. It seems like most of them don't really want to be there because they're obviously really tired from doing it for so long. So it can seem like they're unmotivated. So yeah, I thought that's a good tip actually. That was one thing that threw me off when I walked in there and I'd see like my interview and they just seem really moody or exhausted. And if they did seem moody or exhausted, it's just because they've been seeing students like for every day for like the past week and it gets tiring. So yeah, prepare for that. Okay, here's another one. So this is my Manchester one looked like that. And then this is what my Liverpool one looked like. Yeah. So interview questions. So here's where you really need to be making notes. These are the topics that you'll be assessed on. It might be just a handful of these, it might be all of these at the same time, but your stations will typically be on one of these things. So you have a station on motivation or why you want to study dentistry and medicine. As I said, they'll have that sheet on there saying, this is a station focusing on your motivations and why you want to study dentistry. You've also got, obviously, all of them. I'd say take a picture of that. So yeah, take a picture of that. And after, in terms of your preparation, you then want to find questions that fall under these stations or these topics that you can be assessed on. And you basically get different sheets with a title, say motivation to study dentistry or medicine, and you'd list all the questions that you can find online or that you can come up with that fall under it. And that's how you would practice. You'd then write an answer, say in that essay format, that perfect answer that I said. And, oh my gosh, wait. Okay, no. You'd write an answer in that essay format that highlights everything that could be covered within that one topic or station thing. So yeah, that's everything. Yeah, so let me go on to the next one. So I'll show you some questions in which you can also take a picture of. There is not other slide, just a timer. Can you not see my slides? Okay. That's weird. How long has that happened for? All of it? Oh, I thought you guys said you could see my screen. Okay, wait, let's sort this out. That's unbelievable. Okay. So you can see my screen now. Okay, so you never saw any of these slides? Wow, okay. That's pretty scary. Well, here are the slides then. But I don't normally put information on my slides, but Yeah, oh, that's really bad. Oh my gosh. I thought you guys could see my screen. Okay. Um, yeah, there's not much on the sides, nothing crazy. So you haven't missed out much. Yeah, so don't know if you saw this, but this is what my Manchester interview looked like. So there's a picture with the panels, and then on the left, on the blue board on the back, you can see like a sheet that's stuck on that. And then this is what my Liverpool one looked like. It looks exactly like this. And my Manchester looked pretty similar to that. Okay, so take a picture of this. This is the part where it's I guess information heavy. So note taking is really important now. I'll tell you what, I'll send all of the slides, all of the presentations to everyone. Even though it was like 50 people that signed up, I'll send it to everyone. And you can obviously always check the YouTube video, but you haven't missed out much, I'll be honest. You haven't missed out anything really. If you're listening, then that's fine. So yeah, have you guys taken a picture of this? I'm gonna assume yes. So, okay, nice. So here are all the topics that you can be assessed on in your interviews. Well, yeah, there's nothing else from this. You might be wondering, what about the pandemic and COVID? That comes up under awareness of topical NHS and international health issues. So as I said, you want to have a sheet, almost like it's an exam, like it's your GCSE exam, and you've obviously got the topic and the learning objectives and those sorts of things. Here you've got each of the topics that you can be assessed on an interview, and you'd have a sheet. At the top for the title, you'd put motivation to study dentistry, and you'd find all the questions you can that would fall under that, and you'd practice that over a couple of months and just refine your answer to perfection, basically. Now I'm going to show you an example of that. So I've got my book here from the workshop that I've been recommending you guys to go for, the Medic Mentor Summer School. And I worked through this and wrote all of my answers. So it gave me like a space in there to write an answer. And so let's see. So as you can see, I wrote my answers in here. And I also had a mark scheme as well, so you can see and understand how you're going to be assessed in the interview. And that was amazing for me, because then I knew that, yes, I can give my answers in this conversation format. I can throw in all those things that are going to be getting me marks, whether they like it or not. Yeah, so let's start off with, so I'm going to be looking back and forth from the book and my slides. So motivation to study dentistry and medicine. So here's an example where I've got all of the questions that fall under this. So why dentistry? When did you decide dentistry or medicine was for you? How did you come to your decision? How have you developed your interest in this career? What have you done to find out more about a career in dentistry or medicine? And how informed is your decision to pursue a career so in this field? So as you can see, they're all really similar and your answers are going to be similar. So you want to focus on the main one, which is why dentistry/medicine, and create that essay style, or not essay, just that long paragraph format of an answer that's perfectly worded and everything, as if you were writing it in an exam, basically, or yeah, in an exam. And then as you write that, you have a perfect understanding of why you've genuinely chosen to do dentistry or medicine. And you can then afterwards practice the questions under, like, when did you decide dentistry was for you? So for me, my answer was obviously that it combines everything that I'm passionate about, that I discovered this like I didn't have, for me, okay, I'll try and give a proper answer as if I'm in the interview. So why dentistry? For me, dentistry, choosing dentistry wasn't something that was spontaneous. So my passion for dentistry wasn't spontaneous. I discovered this passion over 2 years of heavy and intense research and spending a lot of my time learning more about the field. And there were loads of experiences that I went through and I was lucky to have experienced, in which contributed to developing the passion that I now have for dentistry. And I'd say that passion I do have is something that's unshakable. It was mainly shadowing loads of dentists and then doing extracurricular research, and learning more about the profession that taught me, when I was reflecting, that it was a profession that combined everything that I could ever want from a job. My love for the sciences, helping people, but also that additional creative and artistic flair that is that's just unique to dentistry. And yeah, I'd give that as a summary answer, and then they'd follow up with more questions like, okay, tell me about how your experiences contributed to this, or you could go on to that yourself. So if I finish with that, I could then say one particular experience in which really contributed to this was when I went for my work experience in the Dominican Republic. I was there for 2 weeks and I did a week of medicine and a week of dentistry back when I was still deciding between what I wanted to do. And what stood out for me in dentistry was how unique each relationship that I had with every patient was, and how in dentistry you have the opportunity to develop a long-term relationship with each patient that you meet. And thus, as you're getting new people come in every day, your interactions are one-on-one, and that makes every appointment, I guess, a really special one in its own way. Whereas with medicine, you're frequently meeting new people, or not frequently, meeting new people over a short time span, and that wasn't something that I was necessarily attracted to. I really enjoyed the aspect of building rapport and blah, blah, blah. That's the sort of answer that I would give in an interview. And as you can see, it wasn't rehearsed. Like my answer genuinely would have sounded something like this. And it wasn't rehearsed at all. I had my perfect answer in the book, but I guess recited that in the conversation format that I have done just now. So yeah. So what are they actually asking? So they just want to see when and where you came across the concept of studying dentistry or medicine, how you developed on that initial interest, or what you did to develop that initial interest in the career, and that you have made a suitable and informed decision in deciding to pursue the career. And as you can see, with my answer, I definitely covered all those things. I talked about how I didn't necessarily say I had an initial spark, but I talked about how my interest in dentistry developed over a 2-year period, through loads of different experiences, and how that allowed for me to have a strong foundation in terms of my passion that allowed me to want to pursue the career in the future. And you guys can do that as well, right? Just practice writing out that first draft of a perfect answer, and it will just come to you naturally when you try and talk about it in your interviews. Okay, curveballs. So afterwards, after you give your answer, if you've still got a bit of time, or if the interviewer is feeling kind of cheeky, I guess, they could ask you a curveball to really test whether the answer you've given is genuine. So they could say something like, why not nursing, as they arguably have more patient contact. So as you can see, I said that I really enjoy how you're able to develop those long-term relationships with a patient. Unlike medicine, where it's almost like you meet a patient during your ward rounds, and that's, you meet them quite briefly, you do whatever procedures required for you to do on them, and then that patient is discharged during the week. And you don't really get to develop that long-term relationship. Whereas with a nurse, you can obviously imagine they're on the wards 24/7, checking on the patient, helping to feed them. And they could ask me, well, you said that you really enjoy that patient contact and that one-to-one interaction. So why not nursing? And then I'd have to give an answer on why not nursing. And for me, I'd say, well, nursing doesn't have as much of an emphasis on the scientific aspect that I was looking for in a career. I love how dentistry provides me with the opportunity to go or delve into research. And nursing doesn't offer that for me, although it does combat, and it also doesn't offer that creative and artistic element that I was searching for in a profession. Whilst nursing does have that helping people aspect, and also obviously does combine science largely, I'm definitely interested in pursuing research. And if they ask me, oh, what research are you interested in? I then talk about the research that I came across when I was doing my Discover Dentistry workshop, or online course, sorry, where they talked to me, or they actually gave me a task in which forced me to research about water fluoridation techniques and stuff like that. So as you can see, those online courses are really important. But yeah, that's an example of a curveball. Another curveball, why not work for an international charity? Because they help more people. Why don't you become a politician? Because they're better placed to exact social change. Why not pharmacy if you enjoyed your work experience there? And then what would you like to contribute to the field of medicine or dentistry? Okay, so those are some curveballs. So you can take a picture of this slide. I'm going to move on. Oh, what not to say. So don't exaggerate your origin, or where your passion came from, or why you chose to pursue that career. Don't say things like, I've always wanted to. They hate that. They really, really hate that. I hate that personally. If you said that to me, you're not serious. Because there are times where during my application process, I didn't even know whether I'd made the right decision up until I had my interviews. And I was lucky in that sense that at my interviews, that passion then came through. But throughout the entire application process, I was still 50-50 between dentistry and medicine. But yeah, around that, towards the end, I finally decided, okay, yeah, that's definitely the one I want to do. Because if I'd got that, I would have just taken a gap year and applied for medicine. I don't really mind. I was happy to take as long as I needed to. But yeah, I was lucky in that I discovered that it was for me during the application. Okay. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions so far? You don't have to say no in the chat, but if you don't, that's fine. But if you do, I can always see the chat on the left. Okay. So I'm not going through all of them. I'm only going through the ones that always come up, basically. So knowledge and understanding of a specific school. So here you can see the questions that they ask. Definitely take a picture of these because you want to be able to answer all of those questions. And if you can answer those questions, you'll ace any station that you do. So yeah, why this school? What specific course features made you apply to this university? I mean, these questions you're able to answer. So obviously you have your perfect answer. So problem-based learning. So that was in my introductory lecture where we talked about the different course styles and the different teaching styles. Problem-based learning is one where there's less of an emphasis on lectures and more independent learning, but learning within groups as well. So you'll set a task, and you basically have to go in your free time, research that task, come up with your own learning objectives within your group, and then come back and present that to your tutor, who would be a professor or someone, or someone with a doctorate within, I guess, that area. And you present your findings to them. And I think they'd assess your work from that. But yeah, you don't have many lectures with PBL. Integrated means that if you want to learn more about that, you can check out the video, but I'll just say integrated is one of the course styles. So it's not a teaching style, it's the way in which they've arranged the different components of the course. So they've combined the scientific and the, I can't remember the word again. I'm just going to say the social aspect of the course. So, or the placement aspect of the course. They've combined that together throughout the 5 years. Whereas some courses like at Oxbridge, they'd have 3 years of science and then 3 years of clinical. There you go. 3 years of science, pure lectures, no clinical experience. Whereas after that, you just have pure clinical. So yeah, to research, to get a good answer for that, obviously you'd start off, I'd say, so with the first question, I put like the biggest and most important question. I think you should base your essay answer off of why this school, because all those other questions kind of fall under that. And they could act as follow-up questions. But yeah, you'd research that for each university you want to apply to, and you'd write your perfect answer and then practice reciting that in a conversation format. Now, curveballs, I need to check the book again. Okay, so curveballs, they can ask, what could you offer our medical school, or what could you offer our dental school? And sorry, someone's just joining. There you go. Okay, so they can ask, what could you offer our medical school, or what could you offer our dental school? I'm pretty sure one of my friends got asked, no, he got asked this in a mock interview. I'm not too sure what I'd say for this, to be honest. I'd probably talk about the extracurricular activities. I think that'd be a good thing to talk about. I think that'd be the best thing to talk about. Because obviously you'd say that you'd apply yourself rigorously to the academic curriculum, but outside of that, you'd also love to contribute to some of the clubs that are related to the dental school. So, or medical schools. So obviously at university, you've got medical specific clubs like medics netball or medics football, or you can, or dentist football or dentist netball. And you can say that you'd love to contribute to those clubs. You enjoy playing those sports in your spare time. Or you can say you'd hope to be part of the student team. So you'd obviously have your dental president, dental co-president, the treasurers and stuff like that. You'd say, oh, I'd love to contribute to that. And those sorts of things. That's what I would say personally. You can do more research on that to perfect your answer on those sorts of curveballs. They could say, this is a horrible question, why should we choose you instead of the other applicants today? Yeah, that would be an absolutely horrible question. And you'd have to be able to answer that without coming across like you're arrogant. Yeah, I guess you guys can think of that, an answer to that, because I don't want to, I'd have to come up with a perfect answer for that. And I don't think I can do that off the top of my head. But those are the sorts of curveballs they can ask you. Work experience reflections and insight into a medical dental career. So another one of the topics in here are some of the questions. So that would be, you'd have a station on work experience. And yeah, so for that first question, tell me about your work experience, you'd write your perfect answer, summarizing your reflections on your work experience and everything you've done. And then in the station, you talk about that and practice reciting that in a conversation format. It gets really simple. And as you practice and as you write these answers, you'll begin to realize, oh, this is actually pretty straightforward. Now, what you want to do, you might be thinking, okay, but how do I write the perfect answer? Because obviously, some of you might not be able to all get this book, or some of you won't go on the Medic Mentor course. So I'd say you'd use the YouTube videos and see what they give example answers themselves. And yeah, you'd see what they do, what they wrote for the example answers, which they would consider perfect, or look at the example interviews, and then you'd base your answer off of that. I wouldn't recommend using any of the websites. I'd recommend just using YouTube videos from previously successful candidates. I wish I could remember the name of this one girl for medicine. And she covered ethics and everything. She gave out her perfect answers as well. She did the same thing that I did in terms of writing that perfect essay example. But she was an Oxbridge student, Oxford student. And yeah, I mean, I guess if you just YouTube or searched up Oxford interview tips or something like that, or interview answers, I guess her video might come up. But if you find her, you definitely know who I'm talking about. So yeah, curveballs, let's see. What was the most challenging aspect of your work experience? What negative aspects of medicine or dentistry did you notice? And have you experienced any aspects of medicine that made you question your career choice? So I actually would talk about, I'm going to try and answer this from my own perspective. So you guys know, I feel like you know pretty well what I did for my work experience. Went to the Dominican Republic and then had another week of work experience in the UK. I just talk about that and my own reflections on how much I enjoyed it. If they then followed up with a curveball saying, what negative aspects did you experience? I'd say for dentistry, the repetition. Obviously, it would get very repetitive at times. You're seeing patients, especially when I was shadowing the general dentist, there will just be a lot of cleaning and checkups, just really simple and repetitive stuff that would get boring at times, really boring at times. And I would talk about that. But then I'd also add my own twist to it to make it not sound like I'm completely demotivated, because here's where I guess good forms of, I say I'm not lying here though, but just forcing yourself to make it positive somehow. I would say that, oh, although it's repetitive and that we're doing the same similar procedures over and over again in certain fields of dentistry, what makes that unique is that you're dealing with a new patient each time. And a new individual. And so for the person doing the work, it would never get boring. And that's one thing that is definitely true. And I realized upon reflection that I was sitting down and just watching them do it. And it was really boring for me to see them do the same thing over and over again. But for them, working on a different patient each time, a new individual talking to a new person, that would make it different every time. So yeah. I guess take a picture of those slides. We're almost done. Extracurricular activities, well-roundedness, and stress outlets. So this is again one of the stations, and just focus on your extracurricular activities. So you again write your perfect answer from that main question. Tell me about your hobbies. For me, I would have said playing basketball was my main hobby, similar to my personal statement. Playing rugby, and then playing piano as well, so I can brag about the manual dexterity that I've achieved from that. You just talk about yourself really, and yeah, maybe mention some of the transferable skills. Okay, no, definitely mention the transferable skills. But curveballs here, let's see. Okay. What makes you think that you will have time for all of your extracurricular activities at med school? A few successful candidates drop out of medicine in the first year. Why won't you be one of them? And then you mentioned a lot of outstanding achievements and what is your biggest flaw. I've been asked what is your biggest flaw in a mock interview, and I can't remember what I said. If I had to choose right now, I mean, I can't say this in an interview, it's tough, because I would say my procrastination. I feel like everybody deals with it, but I'd say procrastination is my biggest flaw. But I always end up getting everything done. But procrastination in that, it can just contribute to the amount of stress I'm dealing with. Whereas if I work on a task earlier, I obviously don't have to deal with that sort of stress. That'll be my biggest flaw. But I guess maybe that it could be good if I admit that honestly. They would love that, because definitely everybody struggles with it in their own way. And procrastination might not be a bad thing technically. So I'm guessing you all might have experienced this before, when you procrastinate on a task and you leave it to the last minute. And then in that last minute, you manage to get it done completely to a really good standard. And what's actually happening there is that you're relying on the adrenaline rush from feeling like you have to do it to carry you through the entire task. And so you get it done perfectly. And so procrastination can be good in that way. And some people say leave everything to the last minute so that you can rely on it. But I personally wouldn't do that. So yeah, those are curveballs for that. So here, obviously, they just want to know that you're interested in things outside of medicine. And that you're not, again, going to be the sort of student that will burn out and want to drop out because they haven't invested their time into other things. And yeah, like during my first year of dentistry, that was definitely one of the best things that I did. I started tutoring for EmpowerOwl, and I'd never ever in my life genuinely had an extracurricular activity, but the way that this really works is a stress outlet is amazing. Just having your own goals outside of, I guess, this big degree that's like just constantly on your mind, having something to focus on or something else that's stressing you out. It really helps, I guess, to just release some of the stress from the other stuff. And yeah, so for me right now, my stress outlet is definitely tutoring and going to the gym for me. Yeah, okay. Knowledge of modern NHS structure and practice. So I'd recommend you check the Medic Portal website for this. They'll give you all of the details, all the websites that you need to read up on. For dentistry, it'll be the GDC, and then loads of other organizations that I cannot remember and I should know because we've covered them in our first year. But yeah, you need to. This is the most boring aspect of the, I guess, application process. And also one thing that I hated the most was reading up on all these documents, basically. Definitely wasn't fun. But you have to, yeah, here are the sorts of questions they can ask you. Take a picture of that, practice writing your perfect answers. I'd say for each of these organizations, which you'd find on the Medic Portal website, just give a brief summary of what they are and what you understand about them. In terms of curveballs, they can ask you, what do you know about privatization of the NHS? So yeah, I guess there's a lot to read up on this topic, but again, they're just gonna they're assessing on how much extracurricular reading you've been doing and how well you understand, I guess, the job that you're gonna be going into. Yeah, okay. I should say, so what you should not say, don't lie. If you don't know, then say you don't know. If you lie and it's clear that you're lying, it has a very negative impact on you and of the impression that the examiner has of you. They definitely don't want to let in a liar into med school. So awareness of topical NHS and international health issues. So this comes under that diabetes thing I was talking about. I got so many questions on this sort of stuff. Yeah, it's big. And what gave me the information that I felt like I needed from it was, again, that online course, Discover Dentistry. But you can also find stuff on the Medic portal that will just give you a really brief overview of the really key information that you need to know about this sort of stuff. You don't have to teach yourself everything. Just having an understanding of things like alcohol. So I mean, if I could tell you right now, the main thing they're going to ask you about is alcohol, diabetes and sugar levels, smoking, and obesity probably. For dentistry, it'll be those things, as well as the way in which they can induce caries or tooth decay. So yeah, I'd say for this, definitely take a picture of all of these questions. You've obviously got the pandemic as well. The pandemic's going to be huge in your interviews, and I sadly can't give more information on that because I don't know what they'd ask. But I came up with sort of questions I thought they could ask. I'd say you take a picture of and try and answer all of these. Oh, no, definitely not that. Try and answer all of those questions in an exam format. You'd find more on the Medic portal website. But yeah, it's like practice questions, like you're doing it for your GCSE. As you practice, you'll get better at answering, and you'll realize the questions they ask you in an interview, they'll be similar to the questions you practice. They'll have like small segments or sections of that question in which you can almost recite answers from the different questions that you would have practiced at home. So yeah, that's why practice is important here. So in this section, you need to be quite empathetical, I guess, or just show good empathy and not accuse people. So I had a lot of questions on diabetic individuals or individuals that have like a high amounts of sugar in their diet. And I had to talk about how the government can reduce that in the population. And yeah, I just had to say so in a way in which didn't come across as though I was someone that wasn't very understanding of their situation. Obviously, people who have these unhealthy diets, they typically don't have the financial stability to be making these sorts of choices for more expensive foods, like expensive or healthier foods, which are typically more expensive. Yeah, and so I talked about that and made sure I came across as though I was a lot more understanding of the situation, and then how the government can play a role in increasing the health of the foods that people were eating. I forgot to mention they asked me that question. I was talking about my experiences. Okay, so hopefully you've got a picture of that. Again, I'll send all the slides. Okay, medical ethics. So ethics is huge. You'll get assessed on this in every interview, for sure. I got assessed on this in every interview as well, by the way. All of these things, I got assessed on all of these things that I've gone over. So yeah, scenarios. So here you can have like either an actor. I had a paid actor at Manchester, went really well, that station. But yeah, you'd be given a scenario and you just have to answer it. It'll be similar to the UCAT, similar to situational judgment, and that you just have to give a genuine answer that would be good. It's not that difficult. Obviously, you observe a junior doctor shouting at a nurse, what would you do? Obviously, interrupt and ask them to stop shouting, and then go over all of the negatives in the way that can be affecting the nurse and the patient. as well as, oh, here we go. You'd have to go over these things when it comes to ethics. So this will actually help you quite a lot. If you write these things down, as I say it, these are the things that you want to be researching based on this station. So ethical fundamental principles, things that you want to be mentioning. So autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice, confidentiality, futility, patient safety, competence and capacity to make decisions, enduring or lasting power of attorney, advanced directives and statements, fairness and truthfulness, honesty and integrity, euthanasia, abortion and assisted dying. So those are the main things that you're going to have to, I guess, talk about in some of these questions. It's normally the first four. I forgot. I think they're called the 4 pillars of ethics. I think for medicine. I'm not sure, but those sorts of things are what you're going to be talking about and need to mention in these stations. Okay. So that's the end of the interview workshop. Hopefully that was a good introduction to what your interviews will be like. And now you know what resources you can use. And yeah, do you guys have any questions now? Let me just stop recording as well.